Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, a podcast that celebrates the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. Season 2, we are diving into Blazing Saddles. 1, Are We Black? Minute at a time. I'm Alan Sanders.
I am Walt Murray.
And joining us again here on this hump day, we've got Jackie Hatcher. Jackie, welcome.
Thanks. Hello.
Jesus Christ, what the hell was that?
Sorry. That was me being an idiot.
Walt. Walter.
I was trying to jot a note and I dropped my pen, which weighs about 8 pounds.
This is a podcast and people want audio quality. Now,
well, folks, you've come to the wrong place.
A lot of people would argue they want audio content, but with you, I'm just gonna go for quality. Can you just not drop shit on your end?
Well, I'm going to use a pencil from now on.
I don't know if that would matter. Could you just not drop it?
I'll put on my safety gloves.
No, don't use gloves. You won't even be able to feel the pen. Jackie, do you see what I got to deal with?
Yeah.
This is why I drink.
Jackie, do you see what I got to deal with?
You know what? I'm enjoying both you guys, so yes.
Now, wait a minute. I haven't heard that, ever. Hold on. I need to close my eyes for a moment and remind myself of what you just said.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. It's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to subject you to this.
You are sorry. Let Jackie talk. Hold on. She just got done saying something nice about both of us.
Yeah, you guys are cool.
Thank you. See, Walt, I don't care what all the...
I like Walt. When I first met him, I was still asking Lorie, where's Walt? Call him. Where is he at? When is the reunion coming back? Come on.
Seriously.
Oh, wait a minute.
Do one every year.
You guys are probably coming up on your 35th in a couple years.
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Uh-oh. Wait a minute. What do you mean I am?
Well, Jackie wasn't in our class. She was just there as a designated drunk.
Are you kidding me?
No, I was the designated drunk driver. Literally, I said, Lorie, go ahead, have a good time. I'll come and pick you up. Okay. I said, when she called me, I had went to Macy's. I said, oh shit, I forgot. I was driving tonight. I said, Jackie, where are you? I said, I'm at a bar. I'm on my way. I said, I literally just sat here. I had been there about an hour and a half. Oh my God.
Okay, and so designated drunk driver.
Yeah. So we didn't let them leave until like 4 a.m. until after she had eaten. I guess we'd ordered some pizza and stuff like that. We're like, you can't drink for a while and you have to eat before you leave.
It's awesome to have you here joining us on this Wednesday edition of The Wilder Ride. It's hump day. It's Igor's favorite day of the week in favor of our favorite hunchback. This is halfway through the week. It's hump day. And let's go ahead and set the table because here's what's coming up today. If you remember yesterday, we were back in the jail and Sheriff Bart was starting to put some wanted posters up on the wall when all of a sudden at the beginning of this minute, we're going to hear something. And we're going to hear Sheriff Bart say, the drunk in number 2 must be awake. And at the very end of this minute, we're going to get sit down over here. So let's go ahead and dive into this minute because we finally, Walt, we are 33 minutes into this movie. We are beyond a third of the way in, and we finally get introduced to Gene Wilder.
Which is crazy because this is seen as a Gene Wilder movie, and he's not in the first third of it. Not even
Gene Wilder
mentioned.
gets the second overall credit behind Cleavon Little.
Yeah, and his character isn't even talked about, inferred, mentioned at all until this moment.
It's incredible that we go a third of the way into the movie before we even meet the second principal character.
And not just this, the second principal character, but Gene Wilder. So here we are doing a podcast about Gene Wilder, and we're covering a movie that he's not even in for the first 32 minutes.
Yeah, a third of our season 2, and not a single mention of Gene.
So I guess the back 60 he really kills. So
I hope so.
Yeah, let's hope. Keep our
all
fingers
right. Well,
crossed.
I have to ask our guest first and foremost, Jackie. I know this movie you may be less familiar with than we are, but I really do appreciate. I know Walt and I, we both appreciate you joining us. Did you have any notion about whether or not Gene Wilder was ever even going to be cast in this movie?
I couldn't say yes or no because I don't know.
So when Mel Brooks approached Gene Wilder, because they had done the producers together, Mel said, "I'd love you to play Hedley Lamar." And Gene goes, "Hedley Lamar? I am nowhere close to playing that. That is not me. I don't see myself. I don't see myself being able to do that role justice. I thought I was the Waco Kid." And Mel Brooks goes, "The Waco Kid? That's supposed to be an aged, older, like an alky, like a 60, 70-year-old, has-been gunslinger. I can't have some Jewish kid from New York be the Waco Kid." And so Gene Wilder said, "Well, good luck with the picture. I'll see you some other time."
Wow.
Never was going to do the movie because he wanted to be the Waco Kid. And Mel Brooks said, "We can't use you. You're too young. You're too Jewish and you're too young."
Yeah.
So Walt, I'm sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
And he made the movie.
He did. But Walt, do you know who was supposed to play the Waco Kid first?
Yeah, some weathered old drunk white guy.
Well, yeah. First and foremost, it was going to be Dan Daly.
That's right. Yeah, Dan Daly.
Dan Daly was an American dancer and actor, best remembered for a series of musicals he made at 20th Century Fox, such as Mother Wore Tights, born December 14th, 1915 in New York, and died October 16th, 1978 in Los Angeles. But he had a whole background in making Westerns, and he had a very agile body. He moved a lot, very smooth, but he was an older guy, and Mel Brooks thought, this is the guy that's going to represent somebody who's been around for generations or decades and would give you that weathered sort of old gunslinger idea. But Dan Daly said, I don't see myself being in this picture.
Well, there were a couple other people considered as well, and wasn't John Wayne also considered?
Well, John Wayne wasn't, I don't know if he was going to be considered for this part. He was definitely considered for the movie. The story goes that Mel Brooks talked to John Wayne and said, "Here's this script we've got. I want you to read it. I'd love for you to be in the movie. It's a satire. It's a parody of the Old West." And John Wayne said, "I really love the script. There's no way I can be in a movie like this based on the language and what's in it, but I'll be the first person to line up to buy a ticket to go see it." But he wasn't really offered a role. It went initially to Dan Daly. After Dan Daly, they decided to go to Gig Young. Gig Young was given the role and, in fact, accepted the role. Part of the reason they went to Gig Young is they heard he had an alcoholism problem, but that he had supposedly gotten over it. And so they said, "Oh, good. He's on the other side of what, the alcoholism, but we wanted this sort of alky, Old West, leathered figure. Let's go ahead and get Gig Young on the set." Well, Gig Young showed up, and the day they shot this scene, this particular scene we're looking at, this minute number 33, where he has to start the scene literally hanging upside down from the bunk. Well, they roll the camera. Mel Gibson. Mel Brooks said, roll cameras, and then he started like, I don't know, coughing, and then he started like frothing, and then he started shooting green crap out of his mouth, and Mel Brooks is like, wow, he's really method.
Yeah.
Come to find out, he was still on the bottle and was having a hard time being upside down. So here he is, barfing all over the set, completely incapable of doing the role. And Mel Brooks is like, oh, shit. We had the entire week set up to film this scene, and my actor who's on set in costume has got the DT so bad he could thread a sewing machine while it's running. So they had to get him off the set as a last-ditch effort. And talk about serendipity. Mel Brooks, in desperation, calls Gene Wilder and says, Gene, can you get on a plane and get out here tomorrow? We just lost a day of shooting. Gig Young is sick. He's got to go to the hospital. I need you for the Waco Kid. And thank God he had nothing on his schedule. He literally flew out the next morning, got in costume, and this first scene was day one for Gene Wilder on the set.
That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But and we've already talked about Cleavon Little and Richard Pryor, and how, for me, I'm very glad that Cleavon Little ended up playing Sheriff Bart. I don't think this movie would have been this movie without Gene Wilder as the Waco Kid.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I called it a buddy cop movie before we even got into this episode. We were chatting ahead of time. This, to me, is like, this is the formula that the 80s would eventually go, oh, damn, Mel Brooks figured this out. You get a white guy, a black guy. They're both kind of like on different sides of the spectrum, but when you combine them together, they can defeat any bad guy. I mean, this is Lethal Weapon before Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, this is 10 years before all those 80s cop movies. This is the formula for it. So, and both of these guys are amazing actors. We've talked about Cleavon Little, and of course talked about Gene when we were doing Young Frankenstein, but these were stage trained and experienced actors. They know how to work with other actors. And one of the great things is right off the bat in this scene, these two guys have great chemistry. And just this conversation back and forth.
Right.
It's two real classy, quality guys. And you can see the beginning of that relationship. And I'll say this 50 times before this podcast is over. I really wish the two of them had worked together on something else, because I think this would have been an amazing pair going forward into some other films.
Jackie, let me ask you, this scene here, when we first get introduced to the Waco Kid, we hear him off stage, like off screen, we hear the and he's upside down, having stumbled off the top bunk. When Black Bart here shows up, and you see the confusion in the Waco Kid's eyes, and he's like,
"Are we awake?
We're not sure. Are we black?
Yes, we are.
Then we're awake. But we're very puzzled."
When you saw this, and especially when they flipped the frame upside down to show what it looks like from Gene Wilder's perspective, what did you first think?
Oh, I just cracked up. It was hilarious. It was just right on point, right on target. I mean, I guess when you've been a comedian and you hit that right punchline, that was it. It was funny. It was just hilarious. Are you black? Yeah, then I'm awake.
we are very, very puzzled.
Why?
Even though Gene and that never once at all does Gene Wilder ever show any sense of like resistance or anger or anything toward a black male. All he thinks about is, but wait a minute, do you belong here? Because maybe I'm dreaming. You know, that's it. That's the closest we ever get to Gene Wilder's character questioning whether he's awake or not.
One thing I really like about the interaction between the two of them is they touch on the fact that he's the black sheriff, and he does kind of say, that's unusual, but then it doesn't really affect their relationship after that. They both just accept each other for who they are and move forward and become friends. And I think that they could have gotten hung up on, okay, let's have a big explanation of the differences and similarities between you and I, and the whole racial issue. They just brush right by that, and they're just like, okay, good, now we're friends.
That's
right. The only hint of anything like sort of like, is he goes, but we're very puzzled.
Yeah.
Which means like, how did you get here? And then that's it. It's more of a just kind of an inquisitive, like, how did you get here? It's not,
right.
How did you get here? There's no anger, there's no malice, there's nothing.
Right. And it's not him, questioning the ability of a black man to be a sheriff or any of that. It's just, that's really unusual. And then they move forward. And of course, he's really in no shape to argue with anybody about anything, I guess, but because he's pretty much drunk as a skunk.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do like that they went straight to the building of their friendship.
Jackie, I want to ask you to weigh in on this whole scene here, because you've got a quote drunk. Obviously, this is the drunk tanks. He obviously was apprehended at some point. I don't know if Sheriff Bart arrested him. We don't ever get that sense, because the last time we saw Sheriff Bart, he was holding himself hostage, and all of a sudden we're seeing him in the jail. So if somebody else arrested him, if he'd been in here for a couple of days, but the fact that we get this relationship right off the bat, what were your first thoughts?
Like when he was like saying, okay, are you black? And I'm puzzled. But then, like you said, it just jumped right into being friendships. And I can relate to that because me and Lorie, my next door neighbor, we just jumped right into being friendships. After she was running down the grass saying, are you moving in? I was like, who's this white lady running down the grass? First of all, I'm Lorie. I said, okay, I'm Jackie, it's good. And then after a week of everything being, I've had heard horror stories of buying your first house, all your things you go to. But mine was smooth up until the last week. Only thing I thought about was this white lady is not going to be my friend. That's all I thought about. So I can relate to that part. I understand that, when you just get a good sense of feeling of somebody. Then too, it's drunk. So, I can relate to that. Get up the next morning and go, oh my God, what did we do? And look up, who are you? We gotta get his thoughts together. Gotta turn up. He has to turn right side up. So I can relate.
What I love about the beginning of this relationship, and Walt, I know you've said it's an instantaneous friendship. I use this line all the time. We quote movies sometimes in our day-to-day life, but this line, when he says, do you need any help? And he says, oh, and he waits. All I can get. I say that all the time. When everybody says, do you need any help? I'm like, oh, no. All I can get. This is an example of how you instantaneously create the sense that these two guys are both on the same side. They're both good guys, whatever their past, whatever they've done, whatever prejudices against them, one being black, one being an alcoholic gunslinger. These two guys suddenly, they have a kinship. They form a bond, and the Waco Kid has no problem reaching out to Sheriff Bart. And
it shows you too. I think what you said is very true, and it stands up for the rest of the movie. These are the good guys, and they're going to go out and they're going to right all the wrongs. And it's the classic Western formula that you set up the guys who are nothing but bad and the guys who are nothing but good, and now they're going to war. And it's a beautiful, awesome setup here.
Jackie, you can jump in anytime you want.
Okay. I was just watching the movie. Sorry. I was like, I'm just, it's a classic movie. You can watch it over and over again. And I like how you guys are depicting it 1 minute at a time, and you learn a lot about a movie then. Because I'm like, look at that stain on that bed right there. I wonder who did that.
and you look at that and you're like, yeah, I'd be on the top bunk too, even if it meant hanging upside down.
It's funny. I had a note here in terms of set dressing. Look at how nasty the bottom bunk is.
It's horrible.
No wonder he's sleeping on the top bunk.
Well, I was wondering if they went and bought that at the LA County Jail or something, because that is a horrible looking mess.
You know what? I want to go back to something here, talking about the friendship and talk about something about friendship along with it. And Jackie, you kind of mentioned it with when your neighbor moved in and you guys were first meeting each other. That sense of trust. Here it is, the sheriff walking into a jail cell, like opening the door to go help somebody, not worried that it's fake, not worried that he's going to get scammed or something. He goes in because he's like, this guy needs help. I'm the sheriff. I'm going to go help him. And when he does help him, there's no sense of, I'm going to use this advantage to attack you. I'm not going to try to escape. It's gratitude. And if you look at Gene Wilder's face, he's smiling and he's happy. He's like, oh my God, thank God you were here, because I would have been stuck here for hours.
That's a really good drunk face that he does. So I think some of that, Alan, goes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. I'm kind of losing track of it now. But now Sheriff Bart, formerly convict Bart, was about to be hung. And so he's gone from, his life was done. He had nothing to lose. He's come into this town where he probably never expected to be. He's not well liked, and he knows that. And he's kind of just starting to put the puzzle pieces in the right place, but he still doesn't really have anything to lose. So he's got a lot to gain. And so I think that has to influence his demeanor and the way he deals with people moving forward somewhat, because, he's just, like we said, he's a good guy, but he's also been at the very bottom. So he knows what it's like to be in the place where Gene is, where you just kind of don't have anything left.
Yeah, but when you say that, I'm going to add to it. He could so easily be a dark character.
Oh, sure.
Having been scoffed, made fun of, mocked, given bad names, given a death sentence. He could have so easily said, oh, here's this dude hanging upside down. I don't give a damn about him. But he doesn't. He never, ever turns into a dark character. He'd rather stay true and good and wholesome. And I think that's how he wins everybody over, because he's true to his character.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that they portray him as somebody who has great character. He at the bottom of it all, he's a really good person.
Jackie.
I'm here.
You can jump in anytime you want.
You guys have such more knowledge of it, and I'm actually just sitting here learning and like, wow, that is true. I mean, you guys have great knowledge of this movie, and I'm a guest.
Well, yeah, you are a guest because you are. Wait, I'm going to use a Sheriff Bart line. Okay, ready? You are our guest. We are your host. So, what is your pleasure? What you want to do?
I'm learning too. I'm sorry.
It's all good. No. I sometimes wonder if Walt and I, we can sometimes take over the conversation, and I never want you to feel, or any guest to feel, like they're not part of it. So you need to just jump in.
I am a part of it.
And I don't want our audience to go, hey, what happened to that guest?
Yeah, I heard her at the beginning, but then I never heard from her until the end.
Oh, my bad.
Well, I think that one of the things that I really do appreciate about this movie is my friends are really valuable to me. Like, I really appreciate my friends. And you have those rare times when you meet somebody and you really click. And I love this scene because it really does a great job of depicting those friendships and how those friendships start. And I know this is a comedy, and it was really meant to be a Mel Brooks kind of goofy comedy in a lot of ways, but there is a lot of heart to this that you don't get on the first brush.
In the first movie, or at the first part of the movie?
Well, if you just watch it one time and just kind of roll through the movie, and you don't take the time to sit back and dissect it a little bit and think it over, it's easy to miss a scene like this.
Right. And that's why I'm sitting here going, wow, this is neat, because when I'm watching the movie, I have to watch it a couple of times in order to go, okay, yeah, I remember this, yes, I do this. But this right here, the friendship part of you guys are talking about, I do value my friends as well. And I will know that Gene and Bart and the Waco, they made the town itself try to come together and say, okay, if they could be friends, then okay, I think we could do this. That's my perspective.
I agree. That's huge.
That is a great statement, that what we're seeing here in this minute number 33 is a microcosm of what's going to come later for the entire town of Rockridge.
I was taking a sip. I agree, Alan.
Well, and isn't this
I'll talk
the point
longer
of the whole
next
movie?
time.
This is exactly the whole point of the whole movie. And it's
yes,
one of the reasons,
it is.
Jackie, I'm glad you're here, because you do a podcast that kind of talks to this. That the point is, from a cultural standpoint at this time, these guys could not be more different. And particularly in 1974, these guys could not be from more different worlds. A white Jewish guy and a black guy, those are two whole different worlds in America. But they come together and they're friends, and they go accomplish this huge thing. And so it really is just the whole, like, we see the whole point of this movie coming together right here in minute 33.
That jail cell was horrible.
That is a bad jail cell. That reminds me of the DeKalb County Jail.
Is it 60 days in?
Yeah. I wouldn't want to do 60 minutes in that one.
What I think we're saying here, and I hope the audience that's with us, that'll continue for the next 60 minutes of the remainder of this film, is this is an instantaneous friendship, because one was in need and one is genuinely good. The Waco kid was in a precarious position. He had nothing. He was stuck upside down. He was totally backwards, upside down. There's a literary thing for you to think about, folks. He was upside down in his worldview. And here comes a guy who had every reason to be bitter and angry and to go after those people who had persecuted him, and instead said, here's somebody who needs my help. I'm not about to let him just sit there. I'm going to help him. And because of that, these two individuals suddenly become not only the best of friends in this movie, they become the heroes around which the rest of the town will galvanize itself and be able to go against the forces of Hedley Lamar and all of the pugs, thugs, misfits, vetwits, mitwits, all of the bad guys that are trying to break this town.
I wonder, could you say those words again faster? That was good. Misfits, which, almost like saying Mike, Just say.
Well, that comes later. Hedley Lamar, he says, Taggart, take a note. I need the following: misfits, hackwits, dimwits, thugs, pugs, mugs. I need Mexican bandits. He's got all this entire list of people, and they all try to sack Rockridge, and it doesn't matter, because when you go past the superficial, when you go past the stupidity of the surface, you guys are, we are all so much stronger the minute we realize the superficial is just that, superficial. There are plenty of bad white people out there. There are bad black people. There are bad brown people or yellow people or red people or whatever color you want to give it. What you are is who you are, not the color or the way you dress or the way you look. It's who you are as inside. And I love how Sheriff Bart and the Waco Kid really, a third of this way in, galvanized the storyline.
Well, you always forget the most important people in that list, and that is the Methodists.
Yes, the Methodists. Apparently they're bad people.
Yeah, apparently.
Walt, you brought up something that was very interesting before we even started recording this minute. The Waco Kid, although he doesn't have any guns in his holster or in his gun belt, he's still got his gun belt on, and he's got all of his bullets.
Yes, he does, and I don't know a jail that would allow that, but I guess they needed to paint him as a cowboy, let you know who he is and what he does. So that I guess was the choice there.
I mean, he's in the Old West. I don't know how many people would have worried about him having bullets if he didn't have a gun, but he's in long johns of some kind. He's got a black hat and he's got a black bandana. Other than that, he's in pink long johns.
Yeah, I always wear my gun belt when I'm in my long johns.
Which, by the way, it begs the question: what was he wearing before he went to jail?
Well, I was going to say it begs the question of how drunk was he?
Because his shirts look stained and everything. Oh my goodness.
It does. He's a mess.
Well, these are not brand new long johns. He's obviously worn them more than one day. But how the hell do you find yourself without a shirt and pants, but you still have your gun belt on?
Well, I mean, we've all been there, right?
No, we have not.
No, we haven't. No.
I can honestly say I have never once been in my long johns and wearing my gun belt.
No, I haven't been that bad. I mean,
it is funny. I mean, I'll tell you, in terms of visual comedy, the fact that you got this guy wearing his long johns, but he's still got his gun belt on and his hat on. I mean, he's upside down in his cell and he's still wearing his cowboy hat.
Yeah, that guy had a heck of a Saturday night.
No, but you know why he has his hat on? Because he has a string. And when I first saw it, I was like, a rope around his neck? Who has a heck of a rope? I mean, yeah.
You're right.
That's the black person in me talking.
Oh my God! Oh my God! First of all, Jackie, that's way too thin.
Yeah. Well.
Crap. Okay.
Oh my gosh. This just took a very wild turn.
Yeah, talk about wilder ride.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to have to figure out what's going to go on here because Sheriff Bart does ask him to, take a seat, like you're not feeling so good. So why don't you sit down over here? So we've got Jackie for one more minute. We're going to have her come back tomorrow. So before we end this minute, Walt, do you have any other notes that we need to get to?
There were actually two things I was going to point out really fast. Number one, right at the very beginning of the minute, Sheriff Bart breaks the fourth wall. And
that's the fifth time now.
That is the fifth time. So I was kind of losing count. But yeah, so when he turns to the camera and says, it looks like the drunken number 2 is awake, he obviously is talking to us. And
good catch. Ironically, I had that written down and we totally forgot to
mention we went right by it. So I was glad I went back and scanned my notes again. The second thing is and we'll talk about this more as we go along and see more of Gene. He is the master of the comedic pause. And when he has a couple of them right here in this minute, but that's something I always watch out for with him because all through Young Frankenstein, he has that great way of just stopping and letting the joke sit for a minute and then delivering that hard punch. And he does it probably better than anybody.
You are absolutely correct. The master of the pause. So many people want to rush to the next joke. He wants to wait, let it sit there, wait for the anxiety of the audience to build and build and build, and then deliver the line. And he is a master of that technique.
I think it says a lot about his confidence as a comedic actor to be able to do that. So those were the,
and it's so innate. I don't even think, remember when we talked with Burton Gilliam, that he was so quiet between takes. It's like he kind of went off to himself and he didn't really do a whole lot. It almost sounded like he was sort of an outcast or something. But the minute the camera was rolling, bam, he was on.
Yeah. And he does have that ability to turn it on and turn it off. So, but that was a great pause that he gave there in the, all I can get, line delivery.
Yeah. And it won't be the only time we have a pause from the Waco Kid.
It will not be.
All right, Jackie, do you have anything else in your notes that we may have forgotten to talk about in this minute?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, before we let everybody know what's coming up tomorrow, Jackie, you are our guest. We are your host. So where can people learn a little bit more about you?
Really?
Yes,
Call
really. Call Lorie. Okay. How can people learn a little bit more about Lorie?
Let me tell you.
Lorie's like, what the hell? I'm not even in this damn podcast. Why are you talking about me?
Well, you know what? Once we get our podcast back, Opinions in Black and White, it's going to be starting up shortly. I would say in the next month, no more than 2 months. Then you can learn a lot about me. But right now, just wait. And the next time you guys want us over, you want to ask me over, I hope to have had at least 2 segments in from our podcast.
All right. Well, you know what? You never know when someone's going to stumble across our podcast. It could be years after we recorded this. So what's the name of the podcast that you're going to do? What's it called?
Oh, it's Opinions in Black and White.
Okay. So everyone out there, if you're listening right now, go out to Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcatcher of choice and search for Opinions in Black and White. And you are in for a great, great podcast where you've got a black woman, a white woman. They both get drunk and they both talk about the similarities, the differences, and everything in between. And you know what? We need more of that, not less.
Right. Yay.
And knowing the 2 of y'all, it's going to be nothing but entertainment.
Oh, I'm looking to subscribe right now. So
yeah, I can't wait.
I'm setting my little robot to say, keep looking. It's a minute it's available. Subscribe. Walt, where can people learn more about us?
Well, one place that we would really appreciate you checking us out is on Patreon. That's patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. And there you have the opportunity to help us out a little bit. And even if you've got an extra $1 a month laying around that you could throw our way, that would be really helpful towards covering some of our costs, helping us do some of the things that we need to do in the Movies by Minute world to make our podcast better and more entertaining and things like that. And also to keep us going, because we've got some expenses that relate to our storage and getting the podcast out and everything. So we would appreciate that. And on there as well, there are several levels. And at the $10 a month or higher level, you can get get access to some of our shows that we've done in the past. We did Poltergeist and we did Christmas Vacation kind of as 5-part specials. So those are behind those paywalls. So if you enjoy what you're hearing here, there's an opportunity to spend some more time with us.
And not that I want to call you out, but Poltergeist was in 5 parts. Christmas Vacation was in 7.
Oh, yes, that's right. So you get 7 opportunities to hear us on Christmas Vacation.
Our Patreon page is really our bonus content where we reward those of you who help support us with additional content that only you will have access to. Not everybody gets access to our Patreon content. Only those who subscribe at the $10 or above level. And that really helps support the show and support both me and Walt doing this podcast. So thank you so much. And that's our response, to be able to thank you by giving you additional content to listen to.
And if you subscribe and go listen to the Christmas Vacation episodes, you can hear the probably one argument that Alan and I have ever had, and it's over the nature of a hero. So you've got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. In Christmas Vacation, is Clark Griswold a hero, and is cousin Eddie the real hero? I'm like, what in the fuck are you talking about?
And the answer is yes. Cousin Eddie is the hero.
I don't know. You know what? Fuck it. Come back tomorrow, okay? Because come back for Thursday, because tomorrow we're going to talk about Jim falling back into a chair, and then we end the minute with what are your pleasure? What do you like to do? But to find out what's in tomorrow's episode, you got to come back tomorrow, Thursday, for this, The Wilder Ride.
Alan, do you need any help?
I don't fucking God damn it.
The line is all I can get.
Oh, all I can get.
Thank you. Was that difficult?
Jackie, do you have any wine? Can you send a bottle my way?
Yeah, 3 just walked in. Miss Lorie is here. I was gonna,
Good. You know what they say? I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy.
But you probably need both.
What?
I got it.
I heard the background.
Can Lorie join us for the next one?
Absolutely, sure.
Oh.
As long as she talks close enough to the microphone, we'll have a new voice for tomorrow.
That's right. The other half of black and white.
I'm just telling you right now,
I'm not sure
Alan.
which half I am.
I don't know. Yeah, we don't know what half yet.
We got to get Father Dave back to pray for our episode that's coming up.
Just to absolve our sins.
Jackie, we did 106 episodes on Young Frankenstein. So it was a little nuts.
Is Jackie here?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
I just texted Lorie and she said, I said, hey, come over. She said, I got to grab dinner for boys and then get wine.
I love Lorie.
That is my girl. I love you.
She is
That's
the best.
awesome. But you know what? I'm an equal opportunity drinker. There's very few things that I won't drink. So what does Boris say? Everyone's equal in my eye. I'll drink anything. As long as it tastes good.
I'll bring you a jar of some stuff a friend of mine made and see how you like that.
Well, look, I'm not in prison or anything. I can afford to buy something that's actually got made by standards. Well, check this. It'll make you blind. That's because you went through a fucking lead line radiator, dumbass.
No, he doesn't use a radiator. That's... Well, maybe he does.
Well, maybe he does. Walt and here's the ironic part. Walt got is a friend of a guy that we both mutually know who has a radio show called BK on the Air.
Mm-hmm.
And one day BK had to go on vacation and he said, hey, can you fill in for me? I'll bring in somebody else to be on the air so that way it's not just you by yourself. That's the very first time Walt and I ever met. We did a radio show together. I immediately felt like this scene we're talking about here. I was like, holy crap, this guy Walt, he and I are like laughing at everything. We're clicking. We're like, there's no animosity. There's no like stupidity. And that was like 3 years ago. And we've been friends ever since.
Wow.